have some special guests with me. I'm going to introduce them in just a moment. But I just wanted to kind of introduce today's topic, and I'm so grateful that Denise so beautifully set us up talking about all the ways that we show up as human beings, all the multidimensionality of one human being. And it's something that really reveals itself to us as we go down this spiritual journey of life. But how many of us have found that this spiritual journey, this life journey, it is not a solo endeavor? Right? We require relationships. We are social animals. We benefit so much from being in community. And there's also an interesting paradox here, that even in this journey of self-discovery, right, finding out who we as individuals are, it comes through relating and relationship. There's this beautiful quote from the mystic Krishnamurti, who once said that it is only in relationship that the self can be revealed, not in isolation. It's a paradox, and yet I think we all can feel this so profoundly. And I think it's one of the reasons why community, and a community like this, can be so powerful, because I look out today and I see so many of us, we all have all these different relationships with each other, these different connections. They look different. We show up differently at different times for different people. As Denise, reminded us, sometimes we are the helper, sometimes we're being helped. Sometimes we're the one carrying someone, sometimes we are the one being carried. So when we relate, and we have this beautiful opportunity to relate on so many levels, we just get to reveal all these different layers of ourselves, all these different dimensions of who we are. And really, that's why we experience the fullness of our individual self in community and in relationship. So I thought it would be a really fun opportunity to invite a conversation between not only Olivia and I, but also some of our dearest friends, to talk about relationships of all kinds, not just, your maybe a close partner, but also friendships, family relationships, and how there can be so many dimensions and layers revealed. I want you to think, and I hope that you think of your relationships of all different forms. We're a community with multi-generational dynamics, and I love that about All Day. I think that's one of my favorite parts, is all the different, the diversity of different experiences, of different life stages, and how we come together and learn from each other. So I thought I would invite our friends Carl and Marni. You already met Carl, and you may have met both of them before, but I want to invite them back. They've shared here on this Aldea stage, and I wanted to just open up and talk a little bit about some of the things that we found in our friendship. And I find that when we open and reveal truths about our personal journeys, that we access universal truth. So when we talk about our experiences, hopefully you are reminded of your own and your own relationships. But the first thing I'll say is that we, this is a multi-generational relationship. There's a 23-year age gap, and yet, I know. And it's something that sometimes we don't think about in the slightest, and yet sometimes it comes into play in a beautiful way. And that's just one aspect of the multidimensionality. So I wanted to pose to you both, what do you think about when you think about just the value of, say, a multi-generational relationship in your life?
Yeah, I think my first thought was that I don't usually see it at all. And especially when I first met Jake, and actually I even met Olivia before Jake, I felt like, as I'm sure you guys do, that I was getting so much. I was learning so much. I was a little bit awed by just your paths and what you're doing and how much I can learn. And I think and then on the other hand, it brings me back to myself at those times and how I've grown through different stages and felt that. So I can be inspired and remembering kind of at the same time. And so there's a richness there. And then our kids are similar age. And so oftentimes I can feel a bit like, oh, I have more kids, and in a good way that I didn't have to do the work of raising, and so just get to benefit from all their goodness. So yeah, what do you think, Marni?
Yeah, same. The learning. It's just a different type of learning than I think with your own kids, right? I think there's I was just telling them there's always that. With my own children, I'm always kind of in that teaching mode for them, and I guess I'm not really as open to being taught by them. But I think what Jake and Olivia give us is that openness to experience their views, their world, and then I take that back to my children, and am able to be more open and more loving just to their way of life, because it's completely different in some ways than ours. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really nice to not have the trigger or the mother wound or any of that stuff in the way of relating and just getting to learn and live life together.
You know, there's, for me, this interesting dynamic, and we've talked about it a lot, where sometimes you don't think at all about any kind of age dynamic whatsoever. You're just like, we're just human beings. And I think at the core, we know that, yeah, we are just souls interacting, and we don't need to get caught up in that kind of thing. And then there are times where I look back and I realize, like, oh, I'm living my life, and sometimes there's a voice in my head of, like, what would Carl and Marni do, you know? Because I think, like, there are times where I just feel like they have things figured out that I look up to and I aspire to be. And when me and Olivia are like trying to figure out like a good decision, Carl and Marni are like the voice of reason. We're like, would they be proud of us in that decision? And you know, or sometimes even, like, I have these memories where, you know, Carl will just naturally, you know, like some of us have this experience where we're like, well, I never actually had this childhood thing that maybe I wanted to have. Like one time, me and Carl were just, you know, we were on a lake, and then all of a sudden he was like teaching me how to skip rocks, and I'm like, you're not my dad, but you're kind of being my dad right now. and the beautiful thing is that anyone at any time can step into a role that you might need. That might be an opening and an empty space for you that you might need some filling. And that's just allowing that is so powerful, letting people do that. And so there was a point in our relationship, and it came really far down the road, where I actually recognized, oh, Carl has been a really significant father figure for me. And I just never had named it for myself. And it was so simple. And then I realized, oh, maybe it would be nice to tell him one day. And so then one day I did tell him, and I told him, you know, what he meant to me. And it's like, it's so simple, and you might have these relationships, and yet you might have never vocalized what a person has been for you. And there are people out here today in this room who have been mother and father roles for me. And sometimes it's just really sweet to be able to say that to someone. And if you never have, take that opportunity. So that was a beautiful moment. And then later down the road, Carl came back to me and he said, I'm really happy to do that for you. And I also don't want to 100% be that for you. I also just want to be your friend too. And so we kind of learned that, yeah, and that's fine too. You can be a little bit of everything for everyone. And so, you know, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to any of that, or if you just kind of, you know.
Oh, you're asking him?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
No, what just came to mind was that you don't really get to pick your family. And so I think what's really beautiful is when you feel the safety of family and you get to relate in ways that you don't necessarily get to relate with your family. And I love my family, and I get to relate with them in a way that I don't get to relate with them because they are my family. But I also get to, like, test parts of myself with people that I feel maybe are more aligned in certain areas and in a really safe space. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say what came to mind was just, it was that beginning where I felt I was getting something we were hiking a lot when we first met, and talking about non-duality and existential things and I was coming out of a kind of deconstruction of my Christian faith, and feeling like, hey, and we're both going to the same church, playing music together, and then going like, I'm not sure I feel the same about all this, and and someone that I could just talk to that felt like relating on a very a level, I think, where, I'll just say this real quick. One thing that comes to mind to me, if any of you, some may not last, but if you played any of those games where like you win something, you have some points and you can spend them on strength or wisdom or whatever, and I was thinking like, Jake had put a lot of his points into the spiritual wisdom side, and
Not a lot into changing a tire and learning how to build
skipping a rock, or
woodworking,
anything like that.
but
Yeah, I'd spent a lot of time there. So there was this sense that I was also getting filled from something that I really wanted to explore and talk about, and I didn't have people, given my community, I didn't really feel as safe to talk about a lot of that. So then I was able to get that. So then I almost didn't know necessarily that I was giving him some of that fatherly energy and help, because I was just sort of, hey, I'm just really enjoying what I'm getting from you, and he was feeling, I think, sort of validated and needed and seen, and then so the relationship part that I'm thinking of is just that it gets so simple, right? It's like, if I can feel seen and validated and needed, then I'm like, this is great. I love being here. This is where I want to be. And you getting that feeling from someone is really important to me, because then I can learn how to be giving that to myself, because I'm seeing what it looks like when someone else is giving it to me.
and there's nothing to do or perform. You don't need to be something for someone else. You just be yourself naturally, just by being who you are, and in occupying that space, other people are benefiting from it. So just keep being you. You don't need to try to be anything you're not. And I think in that there's this aspect of really allowing yourself to come forth, which is vulnerability. And that we talk a lot here about the importance of vulnerability, how essential it is to just allowing depth in relationships and in knowing yourself. And so, you know, I know that we've experienced, just in getting closer, you can be more vulnerable. When you're showing vulnerability and someone else is, then you feel safer to be more yourself. And it's this circuit that happens. And so what do you think, for all of you, what do you think the value of vulnerability is in relationships, even just between the two of you? And I know for you two, you've been on this journey of really seeing all the parts of each other. And so maybe share a little bit about that.
Speaking of vulnerability, hello. Yes. Yeah. He mentioned parts a little bit, and I think we've been doing some parts work with help from kind therapists, and I think I was for me, vulnerability was kind of like my kryptonite. It was very hard for me to be vulnerable, even to my husband, and I think it's just something that in a relationship, I think you said it in the beginning, just like this is the only place where I can learn. And this in relationship to others is the only place where I can learn to be vulnerable and safe. And I think with all that we've been learning about parts, I just realized that there's parts of me that don't feel safe, and it's not my whole self. There's parts of me that feel safe. There's parts that don't feel safe. And I think just with that understanding, it's just really changed my relationship to others, because I understand that when I'm feeling scared, that it's just a part of me that's scared, and there's lots of parts that can steward that scared part and help myself. That it's not his responsibility solely to make me feel safe, or their responsibility to make me feel safe. So that's.
But I think you continuing on that journey and being vulnerable also gives me the opportunity to feel safe to also be vulnerable. And I think vulnerability is like, that's where all the real stuff is. And that's where I want to be. That's where I think is the most interesting and worthwhile. You can only talk about the weather so much. And it does.
The weather in Tucson is pretty eventful, though, so it gives you it can go for a while.
There's a lot of content there. But I think that's where all the learning is. And that's where all the good stuff is. Yeah.
I'll just share that Olivia has been a really good teacher for me in terms of being able to feel feelings, which I've been working on over the past few years and hadn't been working on for all the other ones. And so I feel like I'm a bit of a toddler in that area, and I found at times if Olivia was able to be more emotional or really say how she feels, I wasn't at first thinking, wow, look at her. I was like, I want to be out of here. Right? Like, and I'm realizing I'm afraid of this. And it's an interesting feeling and I think fear can come across as like anger or dismissiveness, like, oh, whatever, I don't know what's happening. I'm just going to go do something else, or I don't need to be here, but not really noticing, like, I'm actually just afraid. And then I'm not even afraid of her. I'm afraid of that part of me that feels that way. And it's recognizing that. I'm like, oh no, we keep that part down, and she's letting it out. And so it took me a while to realize what was happening. And I mean, a while meaning over a few years now, to understand that's what's happening. And then to say, finally get to a place where, like, oh, I can kind of sit with this and realize what's going on in me. And maybe at some point let myself get there. And so that now it's inspirational instead of, fear creating. That's how I've been feeling about it.
Yeah, I think too, it can really help just in any kind of relationship. It can help with reactivity, because if someone reacts toward you in such a way that normally you'd be like, why are you behaving that way? Marni and Carl gave us this really great gift a while ago where Marni said that she basically, anytime Carl would react to her in a certain way, and she'd be like, whoa, what's going on here? She would start talking not to Carl, but to Carl's ego. She'd be like, hey, Carl's ego, I see that you're upset right now. And I think that can be so helpful for all of us, is when we recognize that we are so multidimensional. If someone's upset with you, you recognize there's a part of them that is upset with you. There's also a part of them that loves you, right? And you can let your guard down because you realize, oh, I am the same way. And I think, speaking of your journey of allowing yourself to feel more feelings, I think vocalizing our own needs, and that, oh, maybe there's a part of me that's fine right now, and maybe there's a part of me that needs something, and being able to vocalize that, I think, is really powerful. I know that that's been something that you've been growing on for a few years, and then, of course, the other 50 or the other 45. So
Yeah, it's so true. I found, and it's only come to light again more recently, that I feel that I do the whole conversation in my head, yours and mine. So I'm kind of thinking, I kind of want this, but they're probably going to think that's weird. And that probably is kind of weird, so I probably won't say that. And so then I'm like, and then there's all that time we're maybe sitting there, right? And it's like, I don't know, he doesn't want to talk to me, and I'm like, oh, I want to talk to them, but they probably think it's weird that I don't want to talk to them. So I'm doing all the parts, right? And then not giving the other person a chance to say, oh, that would be fun, or no, but then because if I don't want to hear no, and one of the things that came to me really recently that was kind of earth-shattering is a sense of like, I came from a big family, and I felt like if I don't take my turn, then my turn won't be over. And so I'd never take a turn, and you're like, because I don't want the turn to go bad, or I don't want the turn to end, or I don't want the chance, like, can I have a turn? They say no. And so it's like, if you just don't say anything, then none of that has to happen, right? But you also don't get a turn. And so a little bit tingly talking about that. So it's kind of a big realization to think that all that stuff is there, and like, I want to let other people do their part of the conversation instead of me doing it, because I've already heard that one.
And I think that that's love in a lot of ways, is just allowing every part to be there, allowing each part of yourself to take a turn if it needs to. And there's a freedom there, I think, a freedom to say, hey, whatever needs to come up, I'm allowing for that. There's space for that. If you need to be angry right now, there's space for that. If whatever you need to be. Sometimes we get confused and we think relationship is confining because we think I'm confine myself to be this certain identity for you. Like, I'm only this way. I'm only this type of a person. I'm quiet, or I always have everything under control, or, I'm always the one supporting you and not vice versa. And I think that often leaves us feeling the opposite of free to be dynamic, right? Free to be having it all together one moment and having it all not together another moment, and being okay with whatever shows up. And so there's an aspect where love, in many ways, is freedom. There's this beautiful quote by Thich Nhat Hanh where he says, you must love in such a way that the person you love feels free. can you do that for yourself too? Can you love yourself in such a way that you feel free? So in any relationship, there's an aspect of allowing that space and that freedom. And that can be one of the most difficult things we ever do, is allow someone to be free. Because sometimes people are hurting, people are suffering, and we think, I can fix you, I can help you. But that is not always freedom. So what do you find to be the value of freedom in relationships?
What do you find?
I think I just, Thich Nhat Hanh kind of covered it for me. I like, no one has anything. Okay, thank you, everyone. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, something that has happened in our dynamic as these long-term friends is that I've actually let uglier and uglier sides of myself come out in front of these people. And that used to scare me so much, right? Like only Olivia got to see that side. And she didn't get to see it at first either, And then eventually over time, she gets to see uglier and uglier sides. And then, wow, my friends too. And I actually realized that allowing them to see the parts of myself that I don't even like, right? But letting them see that and letting them love it, that was so healing because I didn't have to be afraid of it anymore.
I have it. I think that for me, it was a realization that, and I think it went off of what a couple of you said in the sense that I thought the best way for me to be safe was to be strong and cool and tough and things don't affect me. So in any situation, you can rely on me to be like, oh, we'll just deal with this, right? We'll deal with whatever happens. And I thought that was providing safety and freedom to just be whoever you want to be because Carl's got it, right? And then there was a time where Marni had shared with me that she didn't feel safe around me. And I was blown away. I was like, I'm the safest person I know. Like, I would die for you. I would kill for you. That's maybe not safe. But there's a sense that I just felt like, how can you feel that way? And then realizing that an emotional safety, like could she break down and say, I can't take it anymore? Because I'm like, what can't you take? How do we fix it? How do we solve it? Right? I'll solve it right now. Who do I need to find? And then there's that sense where she's, no, I mean, safe to just feel that I can't take it anymore. Can I just feel that way? I'm like, well, not for very long. We need to solve it so you don't feel that way anymore, right? And because I wasn't letting myself ever be that way or feel that way, then she's like, you're not a person who can take that. If I'm going to break down and cry, like I was just saying, if I'm afraid of Olivia being more emotional, then it's like, well, then I don't feel safe to be that way around you because you don't like it and you're uncomfortable. And so I think freedom is saying, if I can let myself feel that way, then someone else feels free to feel that way. And I'd like to get there someday. But I still think that the muscle memory of building up the cool, tough, I can do whatever is so strong that if I'm not intentional and present about it, then that's my default. And I think that's what I want. That's what everybody wants. So it's just so easy to just be that way. And so it takes more work for me to kind of, again, go back to like, I'm feeling a little vulnerable. Like, well, if you say that, that'll be weird. She's like, well, hold on. You just said you felt vulnerable. Let's say it out the mouth. Let it have the mouth. So.
Yeah, I think that freedom is also practiced, and you can practice with yourself only to a certain extent. But the real test, if you will, is giving yourself the same freedom when you're with other people. Because, I mean, that is what life is about, is being with others. And you're not, you could lock yourself away, but it's not as enjoyable or as fun that way. And can I be as free when I'm with this person or when I'm with that person? And I think I've really started to take a look at that in my life because I want to be free in all the spaces that I want to be free in. And Is that something that I need to work on? Is it just a choice of like right now I don't feel like I know how to be free in that space, and I might not have the bandwidth to really understand that part about myself right now. And so I'm just going to practice getting my sets and reps in freedom and knowing what that feels like so that I can then try to go back in some of those spaces. So, yeah.
And I think something that I learned about myself, and speaking of being free, is that a lot of I don't know if anybody else has this, but a lot of my way of being maybe didn't necessarily belong to me. It belonged to our society and my mom, but it didn't belong to her. It was given to her by her mom and our society. And part of getting myself free has been recognizing that, and recognizing that in other women, being able to see that it's not just women, obviously, but for me, just being able to see how much of the way I hold myself back from others is a form of safety that is in my DNA, in our societal ways. And I feel like that was such an aha moment to realize that my mother gave it to me, and she was given it by her mother and her mother and her mother and her mother since the beginning. And and I just love to have that awareness of that, and to be able to set myself free in little tiny bits every time I kind of go like, oh, does that belong to me, or does that belong to someone else's idea? Yeah.
I'm going to give a closing thought really directed towards the Aldea community of how to take this forward. And as I do, maybe we'll just go around and we can all just, if you have one closing thought to sum up. But I think for me, really my closing thought would be, and something that I'm just hearing in this dialogue is that safety comes. You might feel a little safe with someone who acts like they have it all together, but you're going to feel really safe with someone who can fall apart with, who you can feel safe to actually not have it all together. And I feel like that's what I love so much about our community is you allow me the space to come up here and to be a flawed, broken, dynamic, real human being. And I know that we're in the process of learning how to continually give that to each other. And that is what allows the safety. That's how we move through this challenging and difficult and beautiful life, is allowing the fullness of our expression, right? And that's not just the good stuff. So we're here in community to create and hold space for ourselves to show up in all the ways that we are showing up. And so I hope that you get to come to this place, and on a Sunday morning, someone asks you, how are you? And you can say, I'm not okay. That is where the real work begins. That's where the real safety begins. And that's the kind of community that we want to create here. And so, and I've felt that so much with all of you as you've given me the room and the space to say, I'm not okay. I'm figuring it out. I don't know. I'm hurting. And that is such a beautiful thing that we can offer to each other.
It's beautiful. And you're all so lucky. Just beautiful. Yeah, you're just all so lucky.
Yeah, I do feel that from here, and we only come here a couple times a year, but it is more of the community that I want and that I want to find up in Seattle area, and I think just realizing that even what you just said, it makes me feel like that sense of that would be uncomfortable to me if I said, how are you doing? And you're like, oh, I'm not doing good. What do I have to do, right? And knowing like nothing. Allow the person to not be okay. And if they want to say more, great. But my first thought was always, oh no, if you're not okay, then, well, first of all, hopefully it's not something I did. And then secondly, just what can I do? But there doesn't have to be a do, and even that can be uncomfortable. I'm not trying to get you to do anything. So I feel that in this kind of community where someone can just be themselves. Hey, I'm this way right now, or I'm feeling this way, and like, great, glad I get to be near you while you're that way, And that's how I want to be more, is not fixing but allowing for myself as well.
Yeah, I think that building safety starts with understanding how you feel safe in relationships. And I think, especially for me, coming from, growing up in really, really big, like mega church spaces, there's so many people, and you're supposed to know everyone and be friends with everyone and be everything to everyone. And I think I have realized I like to have, my group really tight, and I like to go really, really deep in my relationships, and that, that takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of effort, and that is the kind of relationship that I prefer. And there's really only so many of those that I'm capable of having at any, given time in my life. And I think to not put the pressure on yourself to have all the relationships. I think Aldea is an amazing launching pad. It's an amazing place to come and connect and to meet people. But every person that walks through this door doesn't have to be your, person. And I think that we can still learn from everyone here. But it doesn't mean that we have to be everything to all the people that walk through this door. And I think that's really important to understand about yourself, so that we can all be giving ourselves what we need, which then gives us the freedom to, be present and loving beings. Yeah.
Just take a moment. If you feel comfortable, if you would like to close your eyes or rest your gaze. And as we just take a few breaths together, we in this community, we all in relationship in this moment, and just breathing in appreciation and gratitude for the relationships in our lives, the people who have been there for us in so many different capacities, in so many different ways. Friends, family, loved ones. And also, as we breathe out, feeling that space open up inside of our hearts for ourselves and all of the ways that we show up, the parts of ourselves that we aspire to be, the parts of ourselves that sometimes scare us. We create space for all of it. It all belongs here in this body, in this life, in this self, just as all of who we are in this community all belong. And so when you feel comfortable, you can open your eyes. Thank you to you all for being here and for sharing this space with us. A thank you to our special guests for today. Yeah. All right. Enjoy yourself out there. Thank you so much for being here.